Wait, let me set up.
Aha! Hey, look, we're live. This Hangout on air is live. Hello, live people.
Hello.
Do
Hello,
we
dead people.
do we say hello to Bruce on this one too, or is that just the other one?
Well, we should because Bruce is a musician.
5-part harmony.
See, Bruce knows what's up. Hi, Bruce.
Hello,
Hi, Bruce.
Hello.
Okay, that's enough time for Bruce to have responded.
All right, good.
Welcome to our belated next follow-up edition of GxG Music.
Go ahead and say
It's nice to hear
it.
from you
I'm
all.
Peter Bauk. Sorry, I'm Peter Bauk.
Wait a minute, Jim, how long have we been doing this?
He gets
For a while.
Yeah, see, I think you should know how to pronounce my name by now.
Bauk?
That's kind of close. Not so much of an ooh, but you know.
You just got to work on that real deep, low, sonorous kind of introduction. I'm thinking something like, and welcome to GxG Podcasts. I'm your host, Peter Bauk.
Nice.
Maybe I'll just hire you to be my voice instead.
I was just thinking that same thing.
It would really make things a lot easier on me. Okay, anyway, so we're going to just jump right on in, and I'm going to whip up an icebreaker right here on the spot. Okay.
You said you were prepared, Peter.
But see, I said I wasn't. Anyway, so I'm going to ask you where your first encounter with classical music was. Did it beat you up in a dark alley? Did it
You
track
touched
you
me in
down?
very inappropriate places.
Yep, see? Bad touch. Jason, go ahead.
Absolutely. It was from my dad. My father listened to classical music quite a lot as I was growing up, also jazz as well. But I couldn't tell you how old I was, but it was absolutely at home. It could have also been from cartoons, right? A lot of cartoons use the classical music motifs, but what I remember is my dad and his record player with the 9 symphonies of Beethoven and who was it? Arturo Toscanini and the NBC Symphony Orchestra from the mid-50s, I believe, was a staple in my household growing up.
That works. Jenny?
I guess we listened to some classical music. I know that I had a Peter and the Wolf album on my little record player, and that had some classical type of music.
All right. Mr. McCloskey of the Clan McCloskey?
We didn't actually listen to classical music in my household, but my first memory of of exposure to classical music was oddly enough on my Commodore 64. I had a game called In the Halls of the Mountain King,
Oh, yeah.
and the soundtrack to it was
No.
go figure.
No.
Yeah,
Ed von Krieg.
and, and it was just a side-scrolling game, and I don't remember what the point of it was, but that song has always been in my subconscious as a result of playing that video game at probably
Chiptune version of
11
that.
years old.
There's nothing quite like a good Commodore 64 chiptune. I'm getting flashbacks. Okay, anyway, Peter.
Well, I do remember, I think, some classical music on your Commodore 64, because that was really the only place I ever played Commodore 64.
Just because
but-
I was the awesome one.
Yeah, you were. You had the Commodore 64. So I was going to try to say something clever, like as in the first time I had heard classical music was on a classical thunder ad from the 1990s, but then I couldn't think of anything clever like that, so I didn't.
No.
Actually, I got started with classical music pretty early on. I think my parents, my parents talk about taking me to classical music, concerts from a very young age, and I've sort of maintained that habit of falling asleep in concerts that were probably really good, and that I was actually really excited to be at into adulthood.
Wait, so now you can't go to a concert without falling asleep?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. When I was a little kid, apparently, they'd just kind of like bundle me up, and then I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, "How did I get from the concert hall to home?" And then
You were just drunk.
I was just drunk as a child, yes. But then later on into adulthood, I remember going and seeing, I think it was Pikavaya Dama at the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow. Which, to be fair, is a is it a ballet or is it an opera? I can't remember. It was an opera. Anyway, was there and fell asleep also halfway into that. So,
What don't you fall asleep to?
Ooh,
I don't think you can answer that question on air.
Well, the question is that a boring opera or is that a fun opera?
Oh, it was a fantastic opera. The problem was I was just really tired from sightseeing the entire day, and it was a very soft, lulling music and great environment for falling asleep.
Sounds good. Okay, and as for myself, I think like a lot of people, mom and dad had a whole bunch of music in the house, but as far as my parents, they always had the radio on, and it was always on NPR. And of course, local NPR station, being communists that they are, play a lot of classical music. Not as much as they maybe should have. Trying to fill up airtime with news and junk, but But that was it. And concerts now and then, and concerts now too. So there you go. There's my exposure at first.
And I remember playing classical music with Peter as a youth.
Yeah. And I never practiced, but I did okay anyway.
Good work.
Thank you. All right.
Way to skirt the system.
Totally. All right. So the main thrust of this evening's symposium, at least our opening topic here, revolves around the homework granted to us by Mr. McCloskey the last time we met. So why don't you tell us what the homework was and why you chose that?
Well, it was to listen to the Supreme Beings of Leisure album, Divine Operating System. And the reason I chose it was because the Janelle Monáe assignment that you gave us previously reminded me an awful lot of this, and I wanted to see what you all thought of it as well.
Okay. So, I guess we'll just kind of start left to right again, which means I get to pick on Jason first again.
Oh, yes, that's good. No one can take my answer. Overall, I like the album. So I can't recall the last time, or I can't recall when the homework was assigned, but it was a while ago. And a while ago, I listened to this album a number of times, and I enjoyed it as I was listening to it, and then stopped listening to it as as time passed. When we decided to host this particular session of the Hangout, I went back and listened to the album again. And while I enjoy a lot of the songs, and it would be fun in a party atmosphere, I find that the sort of nods to 70s disco are too much for just general listening for me. I get annoyed by some of the fallbacks on disco music that I myself don't particularly appreciate. Now, not all of it is disco, right? There's a lot of electronic beats to it and things like that, but there are absolutely some flashes of quintessential, disco beats and disco breakdowns that I cannot, I just don't like. That's what it comes down to. So I think it's good, right? I'd dance to it at a party. I'd enjoy it if it was at a party, but listening to it in my car, it's not something that I would turn to.
All right.
All right. Jenny?
Okay, so I listened to it. The first couple of songs I didn't really like that much. I thought that Ghetto was like a minute and a half too long. And then I got to Catch Me, which I thought was fun. It had like twinkly sounds. It kind of reminded me of 007. Then it got a little bit of poppy and then sort of melancholy, and then it started reminding me of Massive Attack. And then I started getting reminded of disco as the songs went on. Like Divine, I think, was kind of disco-y, but I really liked the intro and the lo-fi intro on that. I think the last song, Perfect, was too dance poppy.
Wait, are you saying Perfect wasn't?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
But I kind of liked Freezer, too. So I liked Freezer and Calamity Jane and Catch Me.
All right. All right. Peter, I don't remember if you'd told us that you'd actually gone and listened to the homework, or you just gotta.
So yeah, I listened to the first track in its entirety, and I sampled from the remainder of the album in a panic because I realized that I had not done the listening for this week beforehand.
You fell asleep?
No, I did not fall asleep. In fact, from the first track, I think it was "Give Up." I was kind of digging it, and maybe for some of the '70s disco reasons that Jason didn't like it. I mean, in a lot of ways, I kind of thought that it reminded me a little bit of kind of the most recent Daft Punk album, and I almost kind of wondered if this would be, if I were to put on Daft Punk on sort of like smart music tuner Google radio station, if I wouldn't end up with something from Divine Operating System at some point. But what I heard I liked, but maybe had I listened to the entire thing, I would have been more negative about it.
Okay. All right. Well, as far as I go, I listened to it, all the way through a few times. Pretty soon after the assignment was given, and my first impression was like, geez, this is like disco grew up and got a job. So it's like somebody wanted to be really mature with that kind of sound, and they kind of did it, and it mostly works. It wasn't really my cup of tea, but I could see it working. Kind of like, not so much, and then after a while it just became very background music. It's like they didn't give you enough of a real beat to latch on to for active listening. So it became a lot more like, like when you hear a lot of ambient all in a row and you can't tell where one track starts and the other ends, and you don't really have a theme to go on, and it's just kind of there. Well, that's kind of how I felt after hearing it all the way through the first time. It's like I wasn't sure which song I was on anymore. Yeah. So as far as like Jenny's comment about like that one track being about a minute and a half too long, I kind of felt like the whole album was a few minutes and a half too long, just because there wasn't enough change to it.
Yeah, it was very similar.
Yeah. So I figured out, actually, having re-listened to it within the last couple of days, and even a little bit of it before we came on here, that if I really wanted that kind of sound but didn't want that kind of sameness, I'd just put on a Thievery Corporation album instead.
All right.
There you go. It was a good effort, Jim.
Well, like I said, I was really more concerned with what you all thought of it after having listened to the Janelle Monáe, because it kind of reminded me of it at points.
Yeah, I can
see that.
I can see that. But the thing with Janelle Monáe is that there's so much going on, and she switches so easily from style to style that it's like you can't get too bored with it. I mean, at least in a single sitting.
So is the takeaway here that if you didn't listen to the entire album, you were inclined to like it? But that if you did...
That's kind of what it sounds like to me. I mean, it's not really that I disliked it. There just wasn't enough to actively like, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, It's odd that you say that because I actually put it on while I'm working, mostly as background music to just keep me in a straightforward like groove or rhythm for what I'm doing, and in that sense, it's very successful. But yeah, it doesn't have a lot of dynamic difference.
Yeah, because even if I were trying to do that, I think I'd need more of a strong beat still.
And it's funny that you mentioned Thievery Corporation, because that generally on my playlist will come on right after some Supreme Beings, and
Okay.
so yeah.
All right. So we got that. Got that. Okay.
You have a checklist?
That's what I was gonna say.
Well, no, I was just trying to go down the list, make sure everything I thought about in regards to that I had covered. So now
you have a checklist.
Fuck you.
Hey! This podcast is rated. Wait, what is this podcast rated?
Well, I checked the little box that said 18 plus.
Oh, okay. Well, fuckity fuck.
There you go. All right. Well, I see we've lost our resident Lemka for the evening.
Oh no! Did we drive him away? Maybe it was your profanity just now.
That does drive him away.
Totally. All right. So let's kind of fall back into a generic topic. Jenny, what you been listening to?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing at all?
Not even the sound of us yakking away?
I've been listening to podcasts and trying to learn Spanish.
Trying to learn
¿Cómo
Spanish?
estás?
How many years of Spanish did you take, Peter?
Well, I took 3 years of Spanish, and the first 2 were fairly immersive, and so I was fairly conversational. But then my 3rd year of Spanish was taught by an incredibly racist Spanish woman.
Okay, so that didn't help.
Yeah.
All right.
And what does that have to do with music?
Well, we were trying to see if we could
listening
get them
to
to talk to each other in Spanish.
I don't think that the things that I was listening to are very good because it was just listening to it. And so if it's not spelling it out, the way that they say it sometimes on the CD, you can't understand it. So I listened to like 4 or 5 different ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I got very much further than the stuff that I already knew from growing up in Southern California and Texas.
Oh, okay.
Well, in a music-related vein, if you really want to break your brain listening to Spanish,
Ooh,
you can look up David Lee Roth's solo album, Crazy from the Heat. The entire thing is available as a Spanish translation sung by Dave.
Wow.
David Lee Roth singing in Spanish?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to listen to that.
I think I gotta find that.
You can get Puerto Loco del Calor as a single. Or you could at one point.
Okay, I'm just writing this down here. Give me a sec.
I may have just broken the internet with that information.
Well,
It's not good, by the way.
When is
What?
that stop?
I am surprised.
Oh, it's like learning that a song you've known pretty well, or at least always recognize, is available in a different language, and you just must hear it. Like Tony Basil's Mickey.
Oh no.
Oh, it is. Yes, and the thing that gets me about that is it's not a direct translation. The lyrics are actually transliteratively different.
So is this like telling me that 99 Red Balloons is not the original translation?
I think that is exactly what I'm telling you. So
I prefer
there's
the German version.
Another one for our listening audience to go check out. Tony Basil's Mickey in Spanish, which apparently was a very big hit in Mexico City. You're welcome. Peter, what you listening to?
I've been on a David Byrne kick the last week here. I don't know why it happened. I don't know how it happened. But I've been on a David Byrne kick. And
nobody knows why or how David Byrne happens, but
I don't know. But I've been listening to I've been listening to his most recent album, which is not really all that recent anymore. But it's Love This Giant from 2012. Yeah, and I have to say that I was just digging it. It's his normal kind of postmodern wacky self with some really creative kind of musical textures and a lot of instrumental horn stuff too. There are a lot of horns layered in, which I thought was, I don't know, very enjoyable.
Okay, that works. All right. So, what else we got going on here? What is this you're posting in chat here, Jason?
That's a link to a YouTube of someone that's posted the entire album for David Lee Roth's "Eat 'Em and Smile" in Spanish.
Aha, and you'll share this link with our watchers / listeners in the comments.
I certainly can.
Oh, good. All right. So while you're doing that, you can tell us what you're listening to.
What am I listening to? Right now I'm listening to this fantastic podcast. I can't get over how well it's put together. It's one of the best ones I've listened to in a while, quite frankly.
Yeah, but you don't have to plug GxG.
On GxG, come on now. Everyone needs a little, self-referential humor.
I think he's talking about the one we're on right now.
Oh, I am. Was I too obvious? I'm sorry. I'll try and tone it down. Right now, the thing I am listening to is a lot of Grateful Dead concerts. So there is a particular account on Google Plus called Grateful Dead Listening Guide that has been posting links to a lot of Grateful Dead concerts on this particular day in history, basically. Mm-hmm. So on May 7th, May 8th, May 9th, there were some famous or infamous concerts that are freely available that they have reviewed and posted links for download. So I've been listening to a lot of those and catching up. There was one recently for June 9th, I think it was, 1976, which I started listening to today. So that's from a music standpoint. From a non-music standpoint, there's always 100 podcasts that I'm behind on. It's my version of talk radio in the car, basically.
Yeah, I subscribe to too many of them and then get behind and wind up 50 episodes of any given thing behind and think, oh God, I'm never going to catch up. Then I declare bankruptcy, start all over, and do it all over again.
I listen to a lot of music, at work in my office, but unfortunately I've been busy enough that I've not actually been in my office. And so I find that when I do get time to sit in my office and listen to music as opposed to being in conference rooms working on projects, I'll take my entire music library and just put it on shuffle and listen to whatever comes up, which is a fabulous way to unearth songs that you haven't heard in a long time. So there's if I wasn't listening to the Grateful Dead, it would be some melange of all sorts of other groups, depending on what my shuffle brain seems to unearth for me.
So I have to ask you, Jason, are you familiar with / have you heard the Dark Star Orchestra?
I am familiar with. I have not heard.
I'm told that I'm told by deadheads that I know that the Dark Star Orchestra is a fantastic live show to go and see. They actually recreate live performances of the Grateful Dead, and apparently are more or less dead ringers for them. So it's not just that they, it's not just that they cover particular songs. It's like, no, we're going to cover a particular live show, and we're going to play it in the style of that, with all the kind of nuance of that particular live show from history.
Yeah, I've like you. I've heard that it's a good show. I have not actually seen them. I've not actually heard them either. There's a local band here in North Carolina that's a Grateful Dead cover band called Playin' Dead that I'd like to see. I've downloaded a couple of their live concerts, and they're pretty good too, honestly. For a cover band, I would think that Grateful Dead's got to be one of the more difficult bands to cover, considering how wide-ranging their musical tastes were, as well as the way that they would play their songs live.
I think it's in law somewhere that every area has to have their very own Grateful Dead cover band. Around here, it's Uncle John's band.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, geez! I just opened up a website that had audio, and I didn't know where the audio was coming from. And of course, you all couldn't hear it.
Look at that. He's cheating on us.
No, I was just looking to make sure I had the name of the band right. So Uncle John's band, if you go to their website, has annoying music that starts automatically.
Fabulous.
So take that for what it's worth. And of course, that whole thing just got me off of whatever it was I was about to say. Damn it. Oh, yeah. Okay, so what I've been listening to myself is, there's a new album by the Pixies called Indie Cindy. Their first album in a couple gajillion years, or first original album, I should say, in a couple gajillion years. It's not exactly a departure for them compared to anything they've done in the past. It's if you've heard the Pixies before, you've pretty much heard this album, but it's nice to have something new, I guess.
So I have an uncle that's a big I guess he's an uncle-in-law technically, but still a family member, a relative that is a big fan of the Moody Blues, and he read a review. This is a number of years ago. Read a review of whatever the most recent Moody Blues album was. And the review was basically summed up with, if you like the Moody Blues, this is the same album that you've always purchased. And he thought, well, that's a ringing endorsement for me. I like the Moody Blues. I like their music. And if this is the same thing that they've always put out, then I'm going to go and I'm going to get that. So there's something to be said for consistency of musical genre, or at least of what a band will put out.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there are bands that are adept at changing styles and do it well enough that it's like being consistently inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
If people expect you to change around what you're doing every now and then they'll follow. And if you're Frankie Yankovic, you're going to be playing that same couple of chords on your accordion until you die, and well, he did. So speaking of which, there's also the newer album by the Black Keys called Turn Blue. I don't know if I'd say that they've been consistently changing the whole time. Their first couple albums were, of course, pretty sparse affairs. Just a few instruments, kind of a raw production, and as time goes on, they're definitely tilting more towards a psychedelic kind of wave, a lot higher production values, a lot more instrumentation. So they've definitely evolved. I don't know that I like the newer direction quite as much, but I can at least appreciate that they're not just doing the same thing over and over again. And I see some nods and not a lot of other comments. Okay.
We're just letting you talk, Peter.
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. So, but speaking of doing the same thing over and over again and doing it well, there's also a new album by Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. You're going to get the same 2.5-3 minutes per song of something more popular, and it's going to be awesome. There you go.
I always say I find that doesn't get old. I like their version.
No, it really doesn't. All right. Anybody else? Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime now.
Well, and then some changes, other people just, they don't really like it that much because it's too inconsistent with what they've come to know and love from the artist. I was listening to Jack White's album, and I think it's a little bit cleaner than his stuff has been in the past.
Cleaner in what way?
Disappointing. I feel like the edges are cleaned up. I mean, he usually is very grungy sounding. There's a lot of distortion.
Too slick?
Yeah.
Which album was this?
It is called Lazaretto.
Oh, so the one that just came out this week or last week.
Yeah.
See, I haven't heard that one yet. So
I wasn't a big fan of Blunderbuss either. Maybe I just like him with other people.
yeah, he did like the the White Stripes stuff. Definitely has a very particular kind of sonic stamp to it.
Right, and I mean that did evolve.
Right, and but it felt like the same. It felt like the same couple of people, and that sounds kind of obvious, I know, but
It was two people.
well, yes, I know it. That's why I said it sounds kind of obvious, but they had the same. It was the same feel to it, even if the music wasn't the same totally. Never mind. I can't get my words out correctly today.
You need to drink more, Peter.
Maybe that's the problem. I really don't drink.
Yep, that's
That is the problem.
I recommend meth, but just once.
Oh.
But never come down, so just do it that one time for a couple of years.
Ever.
It seems to last forever.
Okay. I'll take that under consideration. Yeah, I had something else I was going to go on, and I don't remember what it was.
Well, that's what happens when you do meth, Peter. Come on.
You should have taken more notes and less meth.
It's bad for your teeth, too.
Okay. Well, I already have bad teeth, so it's a little more meth to, get those pesky teeth out of the way. All right. Well, speaking of things changing, how about bands or groups that have survived vocalist changes or not survived them? Yeah. Okay. So
That would be a good topic if we talked about that.
yeah.
You mean like Genesis?
Yeah, see, Genesis, you'd start off with Peter Gabriel, and move on later to Phil Collins. Who was that last guy? Jeez, I think they did one album with him, and then everything kind of went to hell.
So they did survive the change, and then didn't survive the change.
Yeah.
My Genesis history escapes me. Were they in the band together simultaneously, Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel?
Yes, I believe they were.
So one leaves and the other one basically steps up and takes over?
Well, the first time anyway. Yeah. So let's see.
As opposed to a brand new singer coming in, someone who's not been part of the band, but
Right, well, but kind of the thing there was that when Phil Collins came, I don't think he was ever known as a vocalist before. He was basically just the drummer.
Mm-hmm.
He's just the drummer. And then so then you had Peter Gabriel leaves to do his own stuff, which is some of it's really fantastic and some of it's just a little out there. Peter Gabriel comes in, and the whole kind of style of the band changes from kind of high concept progressive rock to more pop single oriented pieces. That's not just a change in vocalists. It's basically an entire different band as far as the way they played it. I'm not sure I can pinpoint another band that's done quite that radical a shift, at least not off the top of my head.
No. There's a really good vocalist change success story. It was kind of mandatory, but AC/DC had a huge change.
Oh yeah.
And probably the most popular rock album of all time was a result.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But then again, they've made that same album how many times now?
It's still good.
Let's face it, Back in Black is pretty much Thunderstruck, and it's pretty much Ballbreaker, and in fact, the Bon Scott stuff is the only stuff that you can really say was a little different.
I would agree with that assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? They've done well, and kind of like we were getting that before, the people who like Back in Black are going to like all of the other albums that they've done since.
You could argue that Fleetwood Mac is a lot like Genesis. It's not quite the same extreme shift, right? But
No,
originally they were
actually,
a
I
fairly
didn't think
decent
of that.
blues band, and then all of a sudden Lindsey and Stevie Nicks take over, and it becomes more, I can't say single-oriented the way that maybe you might describe Genesis with Peter Gabriel, but it's definitely, it moves away from its blues-oriented roots.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't even think of that, and it's a very good example. Actually, I was speaking of, since we were on podcasts, I listened to a podcast of Sound Opinions, and they had an interview with Lindsey Buckingham, and basically in regards to him and Stevie Nicks coming on board, Mick Fleetwood invited Lindsey Buckingham after seeing him play another gig, and Buckingham basically said, "Well, if you take me, you have to take my girlfriend too." And he was like, "Okay, whatever." And probably just thinking, "Well, we'll try it out. We can dump her if it doesn't work," And I guess it just kind of worked. So there you go. And actually, I think as far as I haven't listened to a lot of pre Buckingham and Nicks Fleetwood Mac, but they were they were a pretty straightforward blues outfit, and I'd say that's pretty close to a severe change, between that and the big popular Fleetwood Mac albums of the '70s, as the changes to Fleetwood Mac were to Genesis were. So, good call. Thank you.
I have to leave here shortly, but I wanted to mention, of course, Tower of Power has had numerous lead vocals, and no one can usually remember who the heck they were because the lead vocalists were such an afterthought compared to the rest of the band.
Well, yeah, that's another thing, because with Tower of Power, it was never, ever about the vocals.
Exactly. So they were, I would argue that they were a band that was almost uniquely resilient in the face of lead singer changes. In fact, I just was reading a little while ago about how one of their former lead vocalists actually was sentenced to life in prison for committing 3 first-degree murders.
Yikes!
Wow.
Which one was that?
That was Rick Stevens.
Really?
Yeah. So I guess in terms of, Tower of Power was never the same for me after Rufus Miller left, but apparently he just kind of disappeared into the ether after East Bay Grease, which was their sort of first album under the name Tower of Power, and then.
It wasn't even really an album; it was an EP.
Yeah. So then they had Lenny Pickett, right?
Lenny
Williams. Sorry, Lenny Williams.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and their last vocalist here. Oh, jeez, what was his name here? It'll come to me. Give me a second.
He just retired, right?
Yeah, I was just about to say he retired, and I think he had actually been with them longer than anybody else.
Is that right? Because I thought that Emilio Castillo or Castillo and
no, I meant just as vocalist, not longest member overall.
Well, Emilio is a vocalist. He has done vocals for the Tower of Power.
Yeah, specifically on Digging on James Brown and not much else. Brent Carter.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think he's been with them close to 20 years. Yeah, so there you go. Can we think of any absolutely horrible lead vocalist changes?
Oh my God!
Like total bombs. Like
Van Halen.
Yes, Gary Sharon with Van Halen.
Yes, horrible.
Just a bad.
Do we have opinions on Paul Rodgers with Queen?
Better than Gary Sharon with Van Halen.
Yeah, I agree with that. it, I don't think I was going to say I don't think anyone quite lives up to Freddie, but that's not entirely true. Paul Rogers was I don't think you can replace uh, I don't think you can replace someone like Freddie Mercury. So it's difficult to equate, and I don't think he tried to replace Freddie Mercury. I think the album that they released was Paul Rogers plus Queen, and I think that's an adequate description of it. That it was not trying to be another Queen album per se, the way that say Van Halen with Sammy Hagar tried to be another Van Halen album, and pulled it off quite successfully for the most part. But I don't think Paul Rogers plus Queen was trying to be another Queen album. I think it was absolutely a guest starring, a very special episode guest starring Paul Rogers. And he was not bad, but it was sort of not Queen.
Well, yeah, but I think he recognized there's no possible way he could have come close.
A more recent analog to that is the Stone Temple Pilots Chester Bennington mashup, or Chess TP as I think they call it on the radio.
Oh my God!
I didn't know anything about this.
He does pretty good on the original STP stuff. He fits right in, but the stuff that they've produced originally as the mashup does not really sound like Stone Temple Pilots or like Linkin Park. So, on the one hand, they're very true to the original material, but they are not tied to the past when it comes to the stuff they're putting out now.
And it stinks?
I don't know that stinks is the right word for it, but it's more of a making music by numbers. No, it's like paint by numbers music.
Formulaic.
Like, yeah, we're going to have here's the hook. Oh, here's where Chester goes high. Here's where Dean DeLeo comes in and does his cool guitar riff. And it's like rinse and repeat. But if you're looking to hear the old stuff, but you can't hear it with the original singer, they're not bad.
Yeah, but if you've got the original albums, why would you bother?
Well, because you can't see them live.
Yeah,
that's true.
I was thinking the same thing about the the name of the guy escapes me. The new lead singer for Alice in Chains. It sounds an awful lot like Lane Staley. And the album that they put out, the first album that they put out when he first joined the band, was a fairly decent, but it was almost a different style than Alice in Chains, and it made me realize how much Lane actually brought to the band. I'd always thought that it was Jerry Cantrell running the show, but I gather maybe it wasn't the way that I interpreted it.
Well, on the other side there, you have. I remember seeing a show come through when I was in high school. Called Creedence Clearwater Revisited.
Oh. Stop.
Yeah, what?
Stop. That's
know where I'm going?
Creedence is one of my favorite bands in the world, and the Revisited is just not.
Well, I don't know who it was they had on vocals. I don't know the guy's name at all.
And that's how history will remember him.
Well, all I know is that he must have been picked solely for his ability to sound kind of like John Fogerty.
Except without any of the good parts.
Well, except he didn't actually sound like the good parts of John Fogerty is absolutely correct. What was it? It was the original drummer for Creedence and a couple guys, and that was it?
Well, it depends which version of Creedence Clearwater Revisited you're talking about. At one point, it was everybody but Fogerty.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's gone through various changes.
Yeah.
I would say, well, that's because he was legally obligated not to play any of their songs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember when Fogerty went to court because his singing style was so reminiscent of songs that he was not legally allowed to play anymore that his former record label sued him for it. And he had to demonstrate in court that is exactly the way he sings, not that he was singing in the style of Creedence. Yeah. It's a fucked up time in the record history. But...
Yeah. Well, yeah, Fogerty is kind of, and Creedence, they're just kind of their own little odd case, and the people are going to study in the future to say, this is how bad things got. You know, because I don't I don't know. I still don't think I follow everything that happened there that led to this kind of. I don't know. Perhaps you can fill it in more succinctly than I can remember it.
No, it's just fucked up record label shenanigans.
I was going to say, I think that the top line is that he signed away all the rights to the music. And so then when he starts playing his own music and it sounds an awful lot like CCR, he gets sued for sounding too much like essentially himself because he doesn't own the rights to it any longer.
Mm-hmm.
He even had a video and a song about it with the claymation pigs all
Vans Can't Dance.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't remember the name of it, but that was about the guy who was running the record label, I think, at the time, that was suing him over being himself.
Yep, that's a fantastic album, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently Fogerty personally has a reputation for being a total douche, though. Oh well, such is life. Alright, what else we got going on here? Oh yeah, I was actually going to bring up 10,000 Maniacs. Now, actually, you've got Natalie Merchant is the voice everybody remembers for 10,000 Maniacs. She wasn't actually their first lead vocalist, but she's their most popular. I don't think anybody remembers much of anything they've done since she left the band.
They're still around?
Yeah, but
actually they are.
I had no idea that she was not the original.
No, the original vocalist was Terry Newhouse. And if you don't remember anything else Terry Newhouse has done, you're not alone. In fact, if you didn't know she did that in the first place, you're not alone.
I think Terry Newhouse still owes me money.
Dang it.
So what about when the band chooses a new lead singer and they go under a new name? Like, shoot, is it, man, I can't think of the name. The guys from Guns N' Roses and Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots.
Oh, Velvet Revolver.
Velvet Revolver. I was thinking Velvet Underground, but I knew that was.
Oh,
no.
That's not quite the same.
Right,
You know,
so
I'm
all
actually
of a
not
sudden
really...
it's a new product. They're not bringing in a new singer to perform the old tunes or anything like that.
No,
but
it's just a new. I think it's a new band. I feel like they have a new. I like them, but maybe that's because I
can't remember actually actively listening to anything by Velvet Revolver, so I can't really comment on it.
I was a huge Guns N' Roses fan, and I couldn't get into any of the stuff that happened after it, except for Izzy Stradlin's solo stuff. I thought that was really good. It was very like Rolling Stonesy, very blues rock, but the Velvet Revolver stuff just completely lost me.
Well, I think that must have probably been kind of the point. They changed the name so that they wouldn't create the expectation that this stuff is going to be exactly the same.
Oh, come on. Every guitar magazine in the world was like, Slash's new band, and that was like the big thing, and that's all they talked about.
Right, but just saying Slash's new band doesn't say, oh my god, it's Guns N' Roses.
Actually, it kind of does. If you play guitar and you saw all that stuff, that's what you would be expecting.
Okay, I mean, part of that is that Slash has a very distinct style, and kind of like Fogerty, he's not going to stop playing like Slash.
Hey, Slash smells like cat pee. You're laughing, but all right, so this is a long time ago, but I did meet the guy, and that was probably back when he was having a real good meth habit, but he smelled like cat pee.
Okay. Maybe that's what's in the hat.
Yeah, maybe that is what's in the hat. Maybe he's got a cat peeing on it.
It could be, but...
He's got enough hair. There could be a lot of stuff hiding in there.
That's because he doesn't shower.
That too.
Wow, okay, sounds like the Jim Hayton on Slash show.
It does.
That's not the case at all.
So do you actively dislike Slash, or do you just
actually, I thought he was
dislike?
awesome, and one of my first guitars, and actually the one that I still have, is a Les Paul. partly because of Slash.
Mhm.
So I don't hate on the guy at all. I'm just relating an experience. And like the most visceral memory I have of having met the guy is that he smelled like cat pee.
Okay. All right. Now we kind of touched on this briefly, but there are plenty of acts out there whose identities are not really not all that heavily entwined with whomever's doing vocals at the time. We mentioned Tower of Power because they're not really they're they're vocals in most of their tracks, but the centerpiece of just about everything is the horn section. And you could probably say something similar about Zappa. He went through a couple gajillion vocalists himself, including doing vocals himself.
You could throw Santana into that as well.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah, that'd work. Anybody else we can mention in the same breath?
My breath is gone.
Deep Purple. They went through a number of different lead singers.
As well as a bunch of Smoke on the Water.
Fire in the Sky.
Which was about a Zappa concert.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was the concert where there was they were performing in, it was somewhere in Austria or Germany, at this hotel that was like on a lake, and something happened. There was a fire while they were performing.
Huh.
I don't know. Somebody's going to probably write me a nasty gram saying that I got all the details wrong, but this might have been the concert where. No, I don't think it was. I was going to say it might have been the concert where he was pushed off the stage by a crazy fan and crushed his voice box. But
it's funny that you tell that story because I could swear I remember reading a story about Smoke on the Water as being essentially a Battle of the Bands song that was written on the spot and actually chronicles the idea that all these bands came to the same town to have a competition of recording songs. And I feel like I read that in like Guitar World or Guitar Player magazine back in like '92.
Okay, so. Here I've got what Wikipedia is telling me about it, and I was a little off on some details. Okay, I'm just going to read it verbatim, and you guys can't stop me.
Sure, we can.
La la la.
Where's the mute?
Yeah, I can mute you all. Don't worry.
Damn it.
All right. So just for proper attribution, Wikipedia, look up "Smoke on the Water." This is the history section. The lyrics of the song tell a true story. On 4 December 1971, Deep Purple had set up camp in Montreux, Switzerland to record an album using a mobile recording studio rented from the Rolling Stones and known as the Rolling Stones Mobile Studio. Yeah, referred to as the Rolling Truck Stones thing and the Mobile in song lyrics. At the entertainment complex that was part of the Montreux Casino, referred to as the gambling house in the song lyric. On the eve of the recording session, a Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention concert was held in the casino's theater. In the middle of Don Preston's synthesizer solo on King Kong, the place suddenly caught fire when somebody in the audience fired a flare gun into the rattan-covered ceiling, as mentioned in the "Some Stupid with a Flare Gun" line. Resulting fire destroyed the entire casino complex, along with all the Mothers' equipment. The "Smoke on the Water" that became the title of the song, credited to bass guitarist Roger Glover, who related how the title occurred to him when he was suddenly woke from a dream a few days later, referred to the smoke from the fire spreading over Lake Geneva from the burning casino as the members of Deep Purple watched from the fire from their hotel. Watched the fire from the hotel. So there you go. So I got some of the details wrong, but I got the general idea correct. I know, I thoroughly remembered something. It's so amazing.
You're good for the rest of the year.
I know. All right. So that we actually managed to cover pretty close to an hour. Congratulations, everybody. Even you, Jenny.
She seems excited.
I am.
So did we have any other bands who switched singers, or did we leave that topic behind?
I don't think we left it behind. We just kind of went on a sidetrack. Do we have anybody else we want to discuss or mention? Well, there's Bare Naked Ladies, who didn't really so much switch vocalists as they lost one when, after he got addicted to crack or something.
See, I didn't know that either. That's news to me.
Yeah, jeez. Not Ed Robertson, the other guy, whose name I never remember.
Stephen Page?
Is that the guy with the glasses?
Yeah. That's, I think. That's what I've been calling him.
Yeah, so there, yes. Yeah, so he apparently developed a bad drug addiction and left the band.
Did not know that.
Yeah, I've seen them live once, and that was post Page.
I tried to see them live in Boston. It was a free show, but me and 200, well, I guess it was more like 26,000 of my closest friends showed up, and I was in the back of the line, so could not see them. So you
did not get it.
Did not get it.
Just never get it. On the bright side, they did put on a very fantastic show, and they have a well-deserved reputation for very good interactions with the audience. Witty repartee and all. All right. Sounds like we're...
Well, no, before you say we're done, did anybody watch the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions?
No.
No?
No. Sorry.
That's a shame.
When did it happen?
Well, it happened a while ago, but it just was broadcast on HBO the other weekend. So it's relatively recent in terms of broadcast date. This is the same year that both Kiss and Nirvana were inducted.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people are saying it's about time for Kiss. But, like, how long ago was Kiss versus Nirvana? And they're both being inducted at the same time?
Well, I seem to recall that there was some kerfluffle about who from Kiss was going to be inducted because they switched members for a few times.
Well, it was all four of the original members on stage at the same time.
Wow.
Wasn't there a bit of a kerfuffle about them even showing up together?
Personally, I think that two of them are real douchebags, so whatever the fuck, I don't care. I'm not a Kiss fan.
Which two?
Peter, Chris Nace, Freely.
No.
No. Oh.
Paul and Gene. Then. Paul and Gene are real douchebags. I actually, for people who don't know, I used to work at Hoshino, which is Ibanez and Tama, the parent company.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the early 90s, if you're not familiar with Paul Stanley and his Iceman guitar, that's an Ibanez. Yeah. So he's an endorser, and Ibanez and Tama were trying to increase their product line by bringing in Laney amplification. So they were looking for endorsers, and they approached both Paul and Gene and said, hey, would you like to endorse our amps and use them on stage and blah, blah, blah. And the usual endorser deal is that you either get free gear or discounted gear depending on what level of rock star you are.
Right, and of course they'd have been at the free stuff.
Yeah, level. They actually demanded money to play it.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, and, Ibanez and Tama have got some real top-level entertainers who are happy to take the gear for free and play it and just, be good with it. Artists from Pat Metheny to Santana's drummer to a whole bunch of metal guitarists, of course, because it's Ibanez. Right. But Kiss they were the only two guys who actually demanded to be paid to play the stuff. And they came into the office that I worked at one point, and they were assholes. And
I think a case could be made that they're bigger businessmen than they are musicians.
Well, they are, but at the same time, in that same office, I had Henry Rollins come in there one day, and he brought 8 guys with him from his band and all that, and he came in to have his band try out guitar pedals for the effects and all, and he was the nicest guy, one of the most gentlemanly people I think I've ever met.
I've heard that about him.
Yeah, he's fucking fantastic. And to contrast him with Kiss...
No, wait. As far as his ability to fuck, I don't think that's appropriate to discuss.
All right.
Anyway, you were saying.
But it's Henry Rollins. And you hear all the stories about him, like getting in the fights at shows and rolling around in glass and like beating people to shit. Like, okay, great. But you meet him and he's just a really nice guy. Like you could sit down and just talk with him. And then there's other rock stars who are completely the opposite, and they live up to all the stereotypes that you think of. And so that's Kiss. And so when I see them getting inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I give a shit. I was never a Kiss fan to begin with, but having met them and seeing that they really are douchebags kind of cemented that in my mind. I forget where I was going with this. Oh, on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the performances were great. Kiss didn't perform. They couldn't be bothered to get up on stage and perform, but when Nirvana was inducted, the remaining members got up on stage and they jammed out to 4 different songs.
As far as guitarists, who was there?
Well, probably for their...
I'm guessing Dave Grohl and Novoselic were, they're on drums and bass, but...
Right, and I can't remember the other guy's name. It's like Pat Smear or something like that.
Pat Smear?
Yeah. No, seriously, that's his name.
Yeah.
He's like the backup guitarist for tour. He was there, but they did Smells Like Teen Spirit, and Joan Jett came out and sang it and played guitar for it.
Nice.
Okay, that's awesome.
And that was awesome. And a couple other people come out and all that, but honestly, I was after Joan Jett. I was like, really? That was awesome. And they led with Joan Jett.
That's cool.
Yeah, she actually didn't lead the stage. She contributed vocals after she was done being the lead.
Sweet.
So yeah, if you haven't seen it, it really is. Even just for that part, it's worthwhile. And the entire E Street Band gets inducted, and Bruce conducts the induction, and that's really cool, kind of cool too. So since this is a music-based podcast, if you haven't seen it, you really should watch it.
All right, I'm gonna look things up right now. Let's see. Anna Joan Jett. Yeah. All right. Yes, on YouTube, right there. Okay, thank you for pointing that out because I don't think I ever would have thought to look.
Yeah, no, I absolutely would not have.
So this is why we keep you around, Jim.
This is like the only reason.
Well, yeah,
Well, this and Doctor Who.
Yeah, we'd let you think there are other reasons now and then, but...
But
If
once
you wanna
we
hear-
get all of our name things.
If you want to hear about other rock stars, I'm happy to talk about them, the ones that I've met. But
We don't care about the nice guys. Yeah, we don't care about that. We want to know about the douchebags.
Totally.
Well, yeah, Paul and Gene are douchebags. Most of the rest of the ones that I got to meet are actually pretty kind of nice guys. Regardless of the genre that they were playing in, jazz or metal, most of them are pretty nice.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Hmm.
All right. Got anything else? Jenny?
No?
No? I'm sorry. All right. So for the next time, I'll try to be a little more organized so we have more stuff to talk about and a little more time to prepare. But I figured, we'd actually gotten on a kind of a roll with our last hangout for our regular show. So I was like, okay, I think we could do this again. So there you go.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah. And to our single viewer watching us right now, thank you for joining us, even if you joined late.
Thank you. Do we have homework?
We have viewers?
We have a viewer. Now, as far as homework is concerned, of course, Jim and I have provided the last 2 homeworks. So it's up to either Jenny or Jason to give us an album.
Well, it doesn't have to be an album, does it? It could be like favorite concert experience.
No. I think we've established the homework as an album thing.
Okay, fine. Be that way.
Yeah, I think I will be that way.
I haven't had very much concert experience. I didn't see my first concert until I was like 23.
What?
That's a topic for another conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I
that
think,
was
I
like
think we could use that as a
was
basis
what,
for
last year?
next week's topic.
I
Wow.
just say I haven't been to very many concerts.
All right. So thank you, Jenny, for providing the topic for next week.
I can provide the homework then.
All right. Jason can provide the homework.
It's going to be Velocity Girl, and the album is going to be Simpatico. Simpatico.
Velocity Girl, one word or two?
2 words.
All right. I have never heard of this artist and/or band, so this will be a new one.
Good.
All right.
That's
So
winning. Yes.
All right. You'll make sure to drop us a message so we don't forget what this is, right?
Absolutely.
All right. All right. Did you catch that, Jim?
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm in for, but I caught it.
Yeah, I don't know either, but we'll find out.
Is this like Tank Girl?
No.
Okay,
Nothing
good.
like Tank Girl. There are no kangaroos.
There are. Yeah, I cannot guarantee that. I don't remember any kangaroos. It's been a while since I've listened to this particular album.
Was there iced tea?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Broadcast will stop right about